So moving on into the NFL free agency period, and we've seen most of the action take place already. There's still free agents like Bobby Wagner out there that could find a home. There's Tyrann Mathieu that could still find a home. However, there's been a lot of action going on in the NFL free agency, and by this point, I think we can figure out who the winners are and who the losers are. The first winner for me is, the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins have had a fantastic offseason to this point. The offense was the clear weakness of this Miami Dolphins team last season, one of the worst offenses in the league, one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and they've really attacked that in free agency. They've brought in 2 offensive linemen, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and re-signed important defensive pieces. On that offensive line, we brought in Teron Armstead. We brought in Connor Williams from the Saints, from the Cowboys. We, of course, traded for Cheetah, Tyreek Hill, bringing him in over from the Kansas City Chiefs. We also brought in another Cowboy, Cedric Wilson, to shore up the receiving core there. And in the running game, have brought in running backs Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, and bring in an offensive-minded head coach in Mike McDaniel is, in my opinion, really going to help this team improve next season. Last year, with Brian Flores, the team was really weak on the offensive side of things. And even with that being said, the team still was 1 game outside of making the playoffs. If that Tennessee game goes differently, or if games earlier in the year go a little differently, the Miami Dolphins could have made it to the playoffs, which we haven't seen us do in, 5-6 years now. So seeing the Miami Dolphins get back to the playoffs would be absolutely amazing, and the moves we've done so far through this free agency period, I think, have really helped us step forward in that direction. The defensive pieces we brought back Emmanuel Ogbah on a 4-year deal. We tendered Nick Needham on I believe a 1 or 2 year deal, and Atlanta Roberts, one of the captains from the team last year, is going to be brought back, as well as Byron Jones was not a free agency addition or bringing back, but we were able to restructure his contract, which did save the team $10 million. And the defense is going to stay the same, and now the offense is so much improved. And we've eliminated all the excuses for quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. It's going to be his year to prove it. And we've done everything we can, and if he is the guy, fantastic. We should make a playoff run, and if he's not the guy, well, next offseason, we're going to have the opportunity to move off him and really improve the team. But the Miami Dolphins are certainly my first free agency winner. My first free agency loser is not necessarily the biggest loser to me. However, it kind of coincides with the Miami Dolphins, and that would be the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots, to me, really haven't done anything to better the team so far in free agency. Just about an hour ago, recording this, they brought in safety Jabril Peppers, but really that's their best free agency addition. They lost J.C. Jackson to the Chargers. They lost Ted Karras to the Bengals, released Kyle Van Noy, traded guard Shaq Mason to the Buccaneers. Dante Hightower is still a free agent. Jamie Collins is still a free agent. They were able to retain both Trent Brown and Devin McCourty, but you lose all those starters. You're losing 6 or 7 starters that were important to the team last year. Yeah, now you do have a decent amount of cap space after really blowing all of it last year for the first time in Bill Belichick's career. However, looking at the team now, that is most certainly, at best, the 3rd best team in the AFC East. Last year, the Miami Dolphins beat the Patriots in both matchups for the first time since 2001. And as I previously mentioned about the Dolphins, that was with a very poor offense. And this defense for Miami stays the same. You keep the defensive personnel and the defensive coaching staff. The Miami Dolphins bring in an offensive coach and a good offensive coaching staff. Meanwhile, the Patriots, at best, have stagnated, but really, the Patriots have got worse. You lose all those starters. You don't bring in a vertical threat, which was a dire need for the offense last year. The Patriots offense, we know, can manage and run with a mediocre running back core. They seem to always get it done, always be averaging the 4 yards per carry mark, which you like to get above for NFL offenses. However, the passing game was very limited with quarterback Mac Jones, who is very much a pocket passer. He does not like to move. It was rare occurrence that last year he was using his wheels to pick up any yards or scramble out of the pocket to try to make a play that way. So when you have a very limited quarterback, you need to, for one, protect him, and you lose your best offensive lineman, arguably, and then you don't add the skill receivers around him. Miami Dolphins went out and got Tyreek Hill. The Raiders, who were in the playoffs last year, bring in the best receiver in the league in Devontae Adams. And then the Jets are arguably going to be getting one of 3 big receivers, whether that be DK Metcalf, that'd be A.J. Brown. You could also, if you're the Jets, look to bring in a Odell, a Julio, who is still a free agent. So the teams around you are making moves, and then the Bills are the class of the AFC East at this point. What do? They still have Stephon Diggs. They go bring in Jamison Crowder. They bring in Von Miller. They make additions to the team with limited cap space, where the Patriots have cut from the team that was already lacking in many areas. The second winner for me is the Denver Broncos, and I think I did another no-brainer. And simple as you sign Russell Wilson. You trade for Russell Wilson. Bringing Russell Wilson over from Seattle Seahawks is probably the biggest move of the offseason up to this point. And you only had to give up 2 first-round picks as well as some other capital and players. However, 2 first-round picks, I was expecting to have to give up 4. And then some with the players with some other picks. Russell Wilson, to me, is still a top 5 quarterback in this league. And you didn't have to give up a lot for him. And then you look in the division around you, if you're the Denver Broncos, you have to compete with Patrick Mahomes. Even losing Tyreek Hill, the Chiefs are still going to be one of the best teams in the league next year. You have the Chargers, who, spoiler alert, are lower down on this list as another winner. The Chargers went out and vamped up on that defense. You have the Raiders, who stumbled their way into the playoffs after all of the chaos last year and now seem to have a structure, have some stability, which they were lacking last year. So Denver had to do something. And the first rumor that really came out was that Aaron Rodgers was going to be the next quarterback of the Denver Broncos. I'm pretty sure we all kind of assumed that was going to be the case. Then Aaron Rodgers re-signs with Green Bay, and that same day, the Denver Broncos go out and finalize the trade that apparently had been in the work for over a month with the Seattle Seahawks, bringing in Russell Wilson, as well as they snatched away Randy Gregory from the Dallas Cowboys. Man, I hate the Cowboys. I'm sure most of the people listening to this hate the Cowboys. And to see the Cowboys get one of their own players to abandon ship, to go back on their, even though it wasn't official, going back on their signing to sign with the Denver Broncos is great to see. So with those two, one trade, one signing alone, the Denver Broncos have made huge improvements to the team and are probably now, at the very least, the second best team in the AFC. At AFC West. You know, the Chiefs did lose Tyreek Hill, and that's definitely going to be a huge killer for the Kansas City Chiefs. You still have some of the best talent in the world there on that team. However, the Denver Broncos already had a good structure. They had a good offensive line. They had good young offensive weapons. They had a good defense on the other side. Now you also bring in Randy Gregory, and then now you bring in another offensive-minded coach in Nathaniel Hackett. And the Denver Broncos have just had W's all across the board, and they're going to be able to compete for a Super Bowl as soon as next season. Now, coinciding with that as well, I guess you guys can see a pattern of how I've done this. The next loser for me, and this is the biggest loser, even over the New England Patriots, and the Seattle Seahawks had a horrific offseason. First and foremost, you lose Russell Wilson. You lose a top 5 quarterback in the league. You only get 2 first-round picks for him. You get some other picks, and then you get a few all right guys. You get Noah Fant, you get Drew Lock, but you don't have a franchise quarterback, and you don't really have a hope of a franchise quarterback, which means next season is going to be a lost year for you. You're not going to be able to replace Russell Wilson this offseason. The crop of quarterbacks coming into the draft this year are not up to standards, which we've seen in recent years, which we've seen sometimes 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10. We might see 1 quarterback, Malik Willis, go top 10 this year. And in a few weeks, I'll do a draft breakdown. I'm a little less enthusiastic to do it because the Miami Dolphins don't have any picks, but content is content. So I will be doing that later. However, this year's quarterback crop, you're not looking at somebody that you say, like, hey, this is for sure going to be a surefire starter for us going on into the future. We've seen in the last few years where we've seen Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert all go within the top 5 and all have pretty much immediate success Now, you can say Trevor Lawrence didn't, but I'd say it's more about the team around him. However, Seattle does not see that when they're looking at the draft board this year. All the free agents have really made up their minds where they're going. You're not going to be able to lure a top quarterback to lead their team. If you're going to bring in a quarterback, you're looking at Baker Mayfield. I highly doubt that they'd be able to pull off a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo within division. So the Seattle Seahawks are really in no man's land for this season and are going to be in contention for one of the top picks next year, most likely. Especially when you look at the teams around them in their division. The Los Angeles Rams just won the Super Bowl. The Arizona Cardinals just made the playoffs. The 49ers just made the conference championship. And then you have the Seahawks with a top 5 quarterback in Russell Wilson only win 5 games last year. Seattle's in an absolutely terrible position. I don't know how they improve. And I haven't even mentioned that they also let go of star linebacker Bobby Wagner. The last piece of the Legion of Boom has been released by the Seattle Seahawks. And there's also rumors that DK Metcalf could be going to the Jets, could be going to a different team. And they're really looking at a complete rebuild. And they're doing it with Pete Carroll. Anybody who's listened to me for a long time knows my disdain for Pete Carroll. And you're keeping Pete Carroll around for God knows why, to rebuild this team that is in a dire need now for a rebuild. They are going to be multiple years away from competing at any level. And Pete Carroll is, I believe, the oldest coach in the league. I don't know why they didn't let go of him and went younger, but Seattle's in a terrible position now, and they really don't have any hope to look forward to. My last winner is the Los Angeles Chargers, as I previously mentioned. The Chargers had one clear weakness, and that was the defense. And they attacked that heavily this offseason. They signed J.C. Jackson from the New England Patriots. They traded for Khalil Mack, only giving up a 2 and a 6th round pick. And then you bring in defensive tackle from the championship Los Angeles Rams to Sebastian Joseph Day. So you've really attacked all the areas on that defense that could have needed help. You have that star-studded offense with Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen. You bring back Mike Williams on a 3-year, $60 million deal. So that offense is good. You have the offensive line. You have everything really figured out on the offensive side of things, but the defense really is what costed them last year. In that Raiders game, Raiders didn't necessarily look particularly incredible, and the Chargers didn't really take advantage of that. Their offense did. Justin Herbert had an incredible game, but the defense really let them down in the end, and attacking it like they did, bringing in all these signings like they have, they've really given themselves a good opportunity to make the playoffs where we saw them last year fail at the last hurdle. And then the last loser for me is the Minnesota Vikings. Now, there's definitely some other teams that you could argue for over the Minnesota Vikings, and trust me, I understand. The Washington Commanders, they were in the race for Russell Wilson, for Deshaun Watson, and they ended up with Carson Wentz. At the end of the day, Carson Wentz is an upgrade, though, at quarterback, and while I've given up on him, I want him to succeed. He has the physical tools to succeed. So maybe in a different environment, maybe with some better offensive weapons around him to throw to. Of course, Jonathan Taylor was in the backfield, but I definitely would take the Washington receiving core and the Indianapolis receiving core. So I don't want to put them in this list. So for me, Minnesota, quite frankly, they didn't step up. The Green Bay Packers have gotten much worse this offseason. But in spite of that, I think they're still a favorite to win their division. They lost pieces, Devontae Adams, Montez Valdez-Scantling, and their receiving core is very weak. And Minnesota had the opportunity now to step up and try to get a foothold in the division, which we haven't seen them win the division in quite a few years now. They did sign Zadarius Smith on defensive end. However, they did not address the dire need on offensive line. They brought in Jesse Davis. Us Dolphin fans know what that means, how terrible Jesse Davis is as an offensive lineman. They needed a real splash signing, a star to add to this team. They tried trading for Yannick Ngakoue, who did not work. They signed him a few off seasons ago. He didn't work. Bobby Wagner is still out there. Zadarius Smith is a very good signing. He was a cap casualty for the Green Bay Packers. However, they needed a strong piece to add to this roster to try to get their, like I said, foothold in the division up. You have the Bears that have a young quarterback and are rebuilding. The Lions are in a very bad spot with Jared Goff at quarterback. They're really going to probably look to build with defense in the draft. And the Packers got worse, losing who they did. And the Vikings haven't really done anything to step up. And I'm really disappointed in them that they have not been able to add pieces that could help them win the division. There are a couple honorable mentions that I would like to mention. First of which, the Jacksonville Jaguars as a winner. They spent a lot of money. If you look at the money they spent, you gotta raise some eyebrows. But at the end of the day, they drastically improved the team. You bring in Brandon Sheriff at the offensive line. You bring in Christian Kirk, albeit on a ridiculous contract, and Zay Jones, another receiver, to help the development of Trevor Lawrence. You have the number 1 overall pick still. You can take Aiden Hutchinson. You can take the offensive lineman Evan Neal out of Alabama. So they still have some room to improve, and they already have improved. Even though they've overspent on pretty much everybody they signed, I'd rather them overspend on those signings and bring in the players they need to than to accept mediocrity, accept just another losing season. They've put in an effort to improve the team. They most certainly have improved the team. Now it's just a wonder if the money they're giving those players will be worth it come next season. And then my honorable mention loser is the Green Bay Packers. They did get a lot worse, losing the best receiver in the league, Devontae Adams. Montez Valdes-Scantling, they also lose him to the Kansas City Chiefs. And then you sign Aaron Rodgers to that ridiculous $50 million contract. And, man, Aaron Rodgers has all the talent in the world to be the best quarterback in the league, to have more championships than just one, to only have one NFC Championship game victory. Like, it's ridiculous that the lack of accolades for the amount of talent that Aaron Rodgers has. And that contract now is going to really limit the ability for the Green Bay Packers to improve the team, and it has. We've seen that so far in free agency. There are still free agents, as I previously mentioned, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, Antonio Brown, if you want to go that way. There's options out there still, but up to this point, your best receiver is Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb, Amari Rodgers, who they drafted last year in the 3rd round. The Green Bay Packers are in a very bad position. They most certainly will use those draft picks on a receiver. I don't want to... It's hard for me to say that with my chest, because when we thought they would have, when we thought they could have drafted a Justin Jefferson, they wouldn't have taken Jordan Love. So they still have the opportunities to improve, but the state of that offense now with those star receivers leaving, with Aaron Rodgers' contract, the Green Bay Packers are the last honorable mention loser for me.